morning. We're going to continue our study on the context of biblical history. Last week, we ended with the death of Alexander the Great. We saw how that Alexander had established the Greek Empire to be the greatest world empire to that date. But with his death, the empire was divided among his generals. We'll be considering two of these, the Ptolemies and the Seleucids, in more detail. The Ptolemies ruled over Egypt, and while they took to themselves the title of Pharaoh and the trappings of Egyptian nobility, they were still very much Greek in their orientation. And in point of fact, it was not until the end of the line of Ptolemies, the end of the dynasty with Cleopatra, that they actually began speaking Egyptian as opposed to speaking merely Greek and being interpreted to the masses. The first of these emperors in Egypt was Ptolemy I. He, of course, was a general under Alexander, but he began to be pharaoh over Upper and Lower Egypt. He took Palestine from the Seleucids, who had been given the region originally with the division, and Ptolemy invaded Jerusalem, taking it on the Sabbath. And it was an interesting point because the Jews have gone back and forth as to whether or not they would fight on the seventh day, on the day of rest. In this instance, the fact that they would not fight meant that the city was overrun and it was taken. And for a long time, we find that the Jews were under control of Egypt. Ptolemy made Alexandria into a great city, and part of what he did in Alexandria was move a large population of Jews there. He transported 100,000 Jews to Alexandria. Now bear in mind, there were Jews throughout the former Persian Empire, and to transport that many into Alexandria meant that it would be something of a hub for all of the Jews of the dispersion. He also incorporated 3,000 Jews into his army. Now, this importation of Jews into Egypt and the status they were given under the Ptolemies was actually prophesied by Isaiah long before. Isaiah wrote in Isaiah 19, verse 18, "In that day there will be 5 cities in the land of Egypt that speak the language of Canaan, and swear allegiance to the Lord of hosts. One of these will be called the city of destruction. In that day there will be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt, and a pillar to the Lord at its border. It will be a sign and a witness to the Lord of hosts in the land of Egypt. When they cry to the Lord because of oppressors, he will send them a Savior and defender and will deliver them. And the Lord will make himself known to the Egyptians. And the Egyptians will know the Lord in that day and worship with sacrifice and offerings. They will make vows to the Lord and perform them. And the Lord will strike Egypt, striking and healing, and they will return to the Lord. And he will listen to their pleas for mercy and heal them." This section goes on, but it was fulfilled that a temple, an altar, was built for the Lord in Heliopolis in the years 182 to 147 BC. Whether this was in any way authorized by God or not through this prophecy is up for debate, but the fact that it was done, and through the large Jewish population in Egypt, we find that Egypt was, within the Roman Empire, one of the sections most ready to receive the gospel in the first century, and indeed would turn to the Lord in large numbers. Ptolemy II is best known for building the Lighthouse of Alexandria, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world that would guide ships into the harbor there. And for our purposes, The translation of the Septuagint was done during his reign and quite possibly under royal patronage. The large number of Jews in Egypt meant that a Greek, which was the literary language of Egypt, a Greek translation of the Hebrew scriptures was needed. It was produced at this time. Now, there are various legends connected with its production, but certainly what we know as the Septuagint had its origin under this pharaoh. We come next to Ptolemy V. He lost Palestine to the Seleucids, and always the Ptolemies were longing to get Palestine back. They never did, but they always wanted that. Even to the end, when Cleopatra was asking Mark Antony to give it to her, it was intriguing because he was loyal to Herod, whom we will be studying later, and would not give the land to Cleopatra. We find that this Ptolemy was immortalized on the Rosetta Stone, one of the most important archaeological finds of all time. The Rosetta Stone is named for the town in the Nile Delta near where it was found by Napoleon's men in 1799 when he invaded Egypt. It became key to reading ancient Egyptian inscriptions. Up to that time, the hieroglyphics, the picture writing of the Egyptians, was a complete mystery. No one knew how to read the inscriptions. But with the Rosetta Stone, there was a key. The Rosetta Stone was a black granite slab roughly 4 feet by 2.5 feet by 1 foot thick. It's inscribed in 3 languages: hieroglyphic, Demotic, and Greek capitals. This is a picture of the Rosetta Stone. Our family saw it there in the Egyptian Museum, and it is inspiring to actually see this piece of history that is still preserved. And the idea that the scholars were able to take in due course the hieroglyphics at the top and then down and see the other languages, and then to be able, because they knew the Greek, to decode the others. Its inscription, made about 200 BC, is a deification of Ptolemy V by Egyptian priests, commending his policies, expressing gratitude for favors, and there were some matters of current events. And then we come to the final important ruler of Egypt, not the last, but the final important one, Cleopatra, the queen of the Nile. Under the Egyptians, both men and women could be pharaoh, could be the monarch. We find that Cleopatra was the one queen to serve in that role as pharaoh. She was, of course, of the Ptolemaic family. She was Greek. This is a bust of Cleopatra that was done during her lifetime. It was carved in Rome at the time of her visit there. And so we can have some measure of certainty that this was indeed what this famous woman looked like. Cleopatra is immortalized for us for her great beauty and her great cunning. She was one of the most intelligent queens to ever live. Her native language was Koine Greek, the common Greek of the region, and she was the only Ptolemaic ruler to learn the Egyptian language. So she could not only speak Greek, but she was able to talk with the Egyptians in their own language. By the way, this shouldn't seem all that unusual to us, because whenever the Hanoverian dynasty came to England, it was only George III who actually would speak English. His father and grandfather, who had been king of England, never learned to speak the language. They just simply spoke in German and had things translated. Or in our own country, While Martin van Buren was certainly fluent in English, his home language, his first language, was Dutch, and he and his wife spoke Dutch when they were in the White House. But not only did Cleopatra know her native language of Greek, and she had learned the Egyptian language, she also spoke Ethiopian, Hebrew, Arabic, Median, Parthian, and Latin, among other languages. She was one of the best educated rulers, actually, of all time. And when you think in terms of the great library there in Alexandria, you have to marvel at what she may have been able to read and learn. In all likelihood, she read the Old Testament scriptures that had been translated into Greek, but she was a brilliant woman. The Ptolemies were drawn into Roman political intrigue, and initially Egypt was actually a greater power, definitely a greater sea power than Rome was. Cleopatra ended up having an affair with Julius Caesar and producing an heir. This was important, and in point of fact, it is part of what may have led to Caesar's assassination. You see, Caesar was designated as a dictator, as a ruler, a monarch for life, but he was not a king. It was not a hereditary monarchy. But the fact that Cleopatra, the Ptolemaic queen of Egypt, had as her son the first male heir of Caesar made it very, very problematic among Romans that perhaps Rome would become united to the Egyptian crown, and this child of Julius Caesar's would be his heir not only in civil matters, but also as a monarch. Cleopatra traveled to Rome as a client queen in both 46 and 44 BC. When she went, it was with a great retinue of barges filled with the greatest of delicacies. And while she was there, she stayed in Julius Caesar's villa. One of the most famous stories is about her time in Rome. She hosted a huge banquet. It was filled with the greatest of delicacies. And she boasted that if they came back the next night, that the banquet would be twice as expensive than the one they had just had. Well, when the Romans returned the next evening, they were disappointed. There were still the delicacies, but nothing that they had not seen before. When that was brought to Cleopatra's attention, she took off her pearl earrings that were worth the full cost of the banquet. She dropped them into her wine where they dissolved, pearls, of course, being soft and dissolving in the acid, and she drank them, thereby fulfilling her boast. Her time in Rome, however, was destabilizing for Caesar because, again, the Romans were seeing this Egyptian queen with her half-Roman son of Julius Caesar, and it caused quite a bit of unrest. Following Caesar's death, Cleopatra ended up having an affair with Mark Antony, whom she married. Cleopatra used the wealth and might of Egypt to advance Mark Antony's position in the Roman Empire, or the Roman Republic, at that time. Octavian's forces invaded Egypt in 30 BC and defeated Antony, leading to Antony's suicide. When Cleopatra learned that Octavia planned to bring her to his Roman triumphal procession, she killed herself it was either by allowing an asp to bite her or by using poison. We're a bit unsure which, although it is fairly clear she had several slaves killed by various methods in order to see which one would be the least painful. Upon her death, her son, the son of Julius Caesar, Ptolemy V, came to be the last pharaoh of Egypt. He went by the name Caesarion, indicating his father's position. He reigned at age 17, August 12th, 30 BC, the day his mother died, until his death was ordered by Octavian on August 23rd, 30 BC. So it was that he reigned for only a short period of time, and with this young man's death, the Ptolemies came to an end as rulers in Egypt. Next week, we'll be picking up with the Seleucids, who figured more prominently in the events that would lead to the Maccabean revolt and sets the table for us to understand Palestine in New Testament times. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope that you have a blessed week.